When I first went there in, let's see, I don't really know, maybe 76, 77. Valda and it was like we walked into another realm or another dimension, and people were living in a beauty and a love unlike anything we'd ever
Mhm.
imagined or dreamed of. And so and I thought, that 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 uh, that that this they were living in what I thought um, was possible for the world, that they had manifest. They were living in that manifest experience of it. Uh, and I guess you might say Sid sort of paved the way, and then he started talking to people, uh, and he just kept talking to people for the rest of his life, really. And so, but he was it was like he says in my book. I read it this morning. He says I this is the new book that I'm working on. He says, in the fall of 1973, I had an enlightening experience. This is the first paragraph that he wrote for this book. I had an enlightening experience and realized the existence of a world that very few people know exists. From that moment on, I walked into a world that is invisible to the naked eye. So powerful was my experience. All the negative feelings and sadness that had plagued me for 42 years vanished like mist in the morning sun. This was the day I realized all my sadness and negative feelings were all created from my own thinking. And he italicized that word, thinking. I had freed myself from all my past negative experiences. At that moment, I knew deep in my heart, if anyone could realize for a fact that we live in a world of thought, and that that thought word is capitalized, they too would find a happiness they were searching for. What I found that day was so simple, yet so powerful, it boggles the mind. Right then, right there and then, I knew that this was the missing link and the answer psychology and psychiatry were searching for. This is the answer that could heal millions of people who were suffering needlessly. Where I lived on the little island of Salt Spring was becoming a magical little island. I'm sad to say, so many mystical healings were taking place. It frightened some people. Others who were in the helping profession became jealous, and as usual, wrongful rumors were spreading like wildfire as people from all over the world came looking for long lost answers. So that was our introduction. I mean, we just kind of walked into this world of people that were living on another level, another dimension, and were uh, they to me they were the answer for community mental health. I realized that, oh my God, the I'd always, I got my minor in psychology, clinical psychology, in community mental health, and I thought, this is it. This is the experience. This is the community. This is the answer. This is what everybody's looking for, is community mental health, a world which would multiply out easily into world mental health. And but they've done it. He Sid he demonstrated it. He proved it. He he realized it for himself, and then talked about it, and other people realized it for themselves. And by the time I got there, the first thing he said to me, which is just my little account of this, but the first thing, I'll never forget it. He said, we've been waiting for you. And I thought to myself at the time, you don't even know me. Did somebody tell you I'm tall? So I thought, did somebody tell you watch out for the big guy or something? Or why would you say you were waiting for me? But he wasn't. It wasn't me. He was waiting. He knew. He knew what he found was um, the answer, and he knew it. He absolutely knew it. And so, um, and in another place in my book, he says, I that anytime someone is enlightened, the enlightened ones always have a profound message to give to the world. Now, again, he was a working man. He was a welder. He was uh, he wouldn't have known what to say prior to his enlightenment. He wouldn't have known what to say to anyone as regards to what enlightenment was, but he found enlightenment. He realized it, the self. He realized the true self, the impersonal self of existence. And so um, he thought. I remember him saying once. He said, "If people knew what I found, it would be the answer to world peace." And I immediately knew. I mean, I didn't know what the heck he was really talking about, but I thought this has to be the answer to world mental health, actually. And it's right here in front of me. And I just want to um, better and better and better understand it. And I have been ever since. But uh, it was it was like a comet coming out of the world that I had been in the world of academic psychology and uh, methods and therapies and helping people and um, and oftentimes kind of arguing with people, trying to push people toward deeper levels of mental health. And so it was odd. It was an odd thing, as you may imagine, but to run into a welder and then hundreds of people that were uh, uncommonly um, healthy. I never met um, people like that, and I've met some beautiful, happy people in my lifetime, but these people were ridiculous, and they were. of another order. And I Valda and I, we were just we just loved it. We just were touched. And um and and he would talk. He In those days he'd never had a seminar. Like we proposed to him that you could have we said, Sid, you could have a seminar and teach people from beyond the island. And you know what he said? He said, "What's a seminar?" Like he had no idea what a seminar would be as regards to truth. Uh, and we said, well, it would be just like you've been holding these meetings, but there would be other people that we would advertise it, and other people could come, and you could charge a fee. And he said, "Oh, I don't want anything to do with that. I don't want anything to do with advertising or charging a fee." To him, it was the ultimate gift that he had been given, and how could he ever think of making that an economic product? It would be a you know an absurd. Um, it would foul it somehow. It would make it be something that was that it wasn't. And he was the most um, difficult person I'd ever met, and still is, and still was, because he just thought so different, and it was confrontational in a deep way. Like he just wouldn't, he couldn't really uh, think like I did. He couldn't really make this truth an enterprise. For example, he was just and he learned so quickly. He was like a like a ninja worry a ninja learner. So about how a ninja is, you just um about the time you grasp them or figure out where they are, they're somewhere else. He was always nimble and learning at an amazing rate. So it was like it was dealing with someone who was truly magical on Salt Spring Island. On in reality, he was, and you could talk to him and sort things out and ask him questions and stuff. But it was almost like he was ahead of the game, and he always had a twinkle in his eye. And it was always, sometimes he would um, be playful with you, like he was with me many times, and he would sort of defeat me because I would get a line of questioning like, um, that made sense to me. That would be like, well, how do you do this? How do you teach this to people? Or I would make up some sort of problem. And this is just an example. This is a funny one he pulled on me once. He says, so I said, well, because I would hear him refer to when this happened to him, this enlightenment experience. And somebody said something to him. And so I said to him when I got him by myself for a few moments, and he was amazing. Like he would just um, someone would ask him a question, and he would stop and he would answer them truthfully, and immediately crowds of people would show up. Like he was like a like a Christ or a Pied Piper, or but he wasn't trying, it wasn't an act. He was just wonderful to listen to. So I asked him privately, and we were on the lawn. There was a little area where we had these seminars, and I asked him, what did someone say to you? I was thinking there must have been some magical words in the questioner's inquiry. That would be it. If I could find those magical words, this was in my thinking. See, I'd find the ultimate technique, and then I would know it, and I could tell it to everybody else. And then if people would pass it on, then the whole world would be enlightened. That was kind of where I was thinking. And so I said, what was it that this person said to you? And so now I didn't know that he thought he he thought, well, he must have thought um, this was time to fool the psychologist, you know. So he says, uh, you really want to know? And I said, yeah, yeah, I do. You know, you tell me right now. Like, let's hear it. And you know, I wish I had a piece of paper and a pen, but I didn't. You know, I was just we were out in this lawn, and I had him by myself, and so I thought, oh, I'll just remember it. You know, it couldn't have been that complicated. So I was really concentrating, and he says, "Are you ready?" And I said, "Yes." And then he 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 pulls this. He starts talking in what in psychology you call nonsense syllables. So I have no idea what they were, but I'll just give you an example. It was like Montekishu, Lakovagma, Babadoodoo, you know, and he went on and on for like uh it seemed like forever because I was trying to memorize it. And then after a moment, you can't you can't really memorize nonsense syllables. They make no sense to your language. And so I was just left with, what is he talking about, you know? And I didn't know, but behind me had collected this group of people. There was a group of people that were attending the seminar, and we were on a break. And there must have been 50 people behind me that I had no awareness that they were there. I just thought this was just me interviewing Sid and about to find his secret to life. And then he was expounding on these nonsense syllables that I couldn't comprehend. And and then after talking at an absurd length of time, so if I had a recorder, it wouldn't have helped me but I didn't. And then he just burst out laughing. It was like the biggest joke to him. It was like a cosmic joke. And he got really tickled. He was just his eyes were twinkling and he just really enjoyed this moment, and I couldn't help but kind of get infected by his his joy. And then the whole group behind me that I didn't even know were there, they all bursted out laughing. And it was a shock, like, well, where did you people come from? And then the joke was on me. And fortunately, I um I took no offense whatsoever. It was not offensive to me. He wasn't making fun of me. It was like a just a cosmic moment, but it was a pure moment of humility, and it kind of temporarily broke my relentless search for the magical code of see, I was in my thinking that the answer was in my thinking, and if he would just tell me, then that would do it. But it wasn't of that order at all. It in effect, it was not in thinking that the answer, the truth was to be told. And he would say that over and over and over again, all of you that have listened to his recordings. And if you haven't, I would totally recommend you listen to everything he ever said, because um, that's what I did for many, many years. And that's what I still do. I still listen to his recordings, and you can't think and listen to those recordings. It's really hard to do it because you you're trying to analyze something that is unanalyzable, and it's truth, and truth is not a thinking a process. Fundamentally, absolutely, it's a principle of all of life, and he was a teacher of the principle of thought of life. And so um, finally, finally, for me, I began to get accustomed to uh, living in less my personal thinking, and holding it and delving into it. Now I still do it, but I began to see slowly that that was all those attempts were fruitless always. But I would do it again, and I do it frequently, but it wasn't it never paid off. And I would always end up laughing at myself. And and when I would laugh at myself, I would always have to smile, and sort of go, um, oh, uh, caught myself again. So um, it's a pleasure to meet with people like y'all, and this is, I don't know, 40 some years later, uh, and I'm still laughing at myself, and I hope you can laugh with me at yourself, because there's mental health just beyond that um, illusion of self-importance, that when you have self-importance, that's what I was suffering from, was I wanted to know the secret words to what he found out. And it would, there was an ego a challenge in there for me, and your ego just can't. It it's the problem. It's not the answer ever. So this town hall, after so many years, where Brett and I, and you with you all's participation and encouragement and goodwill and all are we're still um, a meeting, to share um, the truth that is not. It's not a political truth. It's not a personal truth. It's not a truth of it's not a religious truth. It's truth. And it speaks to everybody who listens. So so we meet and do this now and again every couple of months or so. So welcome. Sorry for I don't mean to indulge uh, your your patience, but I wanted to. It just occurred to me to kind of give you an orientation and an introduction because I know sometimes there are brand new people on here and sometimes people that have been around for a long time. And so, um, but this is everybody's truth, and we're pointing to it, and welcome. Uh, so, should we throw the? What do you think, Brett? Should we throw it up for questions, or do you have any comments, Brett, that you would like to share?
There's one thing, if you could stay a bit more, is if truth is not found in thinking, I was saying that, how do you search for it then?
Say it again.
How do you search for truth if it's not found in thinking?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was it was like a judo trick, It's like so it's nothing. Um, and so you go beyond the form of thinking, and and before the form of thinking it is the principles of thought. That alone, that's the key right there. But it's not a form of thought. It's the principles are formless, which was really hard for me at because I didn't know where else to look but form. And so um, now if you listen to Sid's recordings, he'll say it over and over again in a million different ways. Don't try to figure it out, just listen. And so that's what I would do. I would just listen. And uh, and if I was fortunate, I would my mind would quiet down, you know, and I would become mentally healthy. I would have a different feeling, but it didn't come from my thinking about what was being said or my thinking about my past or my thinking about my problems or your problems or anyone else's or anyone else. It came from nothing. It came from nothing. and still does. And that's such a simple, it's almost like you might say like a key that you travel through the keyhole of that key, and it opens up a universal knowledge that is waiting to help you via insight and via peace and via truth and comfort for all time, for everyone. And it's always new. It's always in the now that you find that key. It's not like in your library of thinking, of your thinking system. When you find that key and you go through that keyhole, let's just say, I'm just trying to paint a picture here. You, your thinking system, your conditioning collapses. It just collapses. It's like, oh, well, that doesn't pertain. That's, in a way, that's kind of what happened to me when Sid just burst out laughing. I, I just, I could laugh at myself. The beauty, if you ever have a moment where you can laugh at yourself, like one time, all my friends and kids in my class, they all set up this big um, ruse for me to go bowling. But what it was is they were going to have a surprise birthday party for me. So I walked into this hall in order to. They had something. I had some reason for me to stop there, and then everyone yells, "Surprise!" And it's like you realize, oh my gosh, there's been all of this arranged to trick you. And they were all planning, and it was my 13th birthday, and they all surprised me. And there were 50 of them in there. And my parents were in there, and family, and all my fellow students, and I was totally off guard. And I just had it touched me so deeply that everybody would go to that trouble. But it was like a magical moment of a sudden, the now rushed into me, and I realized what I thought was going to happen next was was completely off the table. You know, there were going to be presents and candles and cake and all of that, and none of what I thought was going to be that the afternoon would entail disappeared in a heartbeat. And it was like that. But it's like that often enough that it's almost like a reset of your mind's games and things that you play on yourself and tricks on yourself and things that you go into thinking about. When you hit this keyhole, you get a second chance, and everything, your past disappears. Your conditioning um, disappears, or at least a big chunk of it. Maybe not all of it, but Brett just for example, Brett wrote something about a new therapy without tools. You can find it well, where do you find that, Brett?
That would be on my website. I'll put a link in the chat box in a moment.
Okay, okay. And so when I was reading that just a few, well, 3 or 4 weeks ago, something in my conditioning disappeared, something that I didn't expect disappeared. And I realized, and what it was I saw that my psychology had I didn't know that there were limitations that I had been brought up under the illusion of, and one of them, and he mentions three of them in there. One was depression, circumstances, and there was another one, Brad. What do you remember the third one?
Yeah, depression, circumstances, the past, and behavior.
Past them. So I had these provinces, you might say, these systems of thought, and I thought they were true, and I accepted them. And I didn't even know that I'd been carrying them for all these many years. And when it was spelled out the way Brett spelled it out, it hit me. Oh my God, those are just thoughts. Those are just conditioned thoughts. They're not real. They're just beliefs. They're belief systems that I had adopted and treated and talked about and in a kind of weird way almost worshipped. And I thought um, they had become so much a part of my mental realm, I didn't even know they were thoughts that became um, more. And when I read his article, they blew up. And I thought, whoa. And I had that feeling of that surprise birthday party again. I had that feeling of like, whoa, I didn't know I was carrying that. But it was in my conditioning. And that's the beauty of the principles. They are antithetical, you might say, to all conditioning, all limitations, all beliefs. You can believe in a belief that you have, but but when you realize self, again, you there's a separation between truth and beliefs at some level. It happens to you, and there's an insight, and when that happens, you're you're blessed, and you have resilience. You have a new life, a new mental life. To some degree, a new mental life is shown to you, and you go through that keyhole, and you're it's like it collapses your conditioning. And you never get tired of that because there's all these levels. That's the other thing that I once had a question. Sid asked me a question, and he says, what do you think the universe is made of?" And I thought, Oh, well, now, if you go to the internet and you look on how the universe works or how big is the universe, there's a million programs that, as far as ones that I've ever seen, they're all about the physical planets and the nebula and stars and distance, and they're all about time, they're all about space, they're all about the physicality of life. And you often feel small when you think about all those things, but those are the nature of, as far as I've ever seen, all those programs are built on that belief system of 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 the physical. So when Sid asked me this question, what do I think the universe is made of? That's what I thought. I didn't say that to him because after my experience with him in front of all those people that were behind me many years ago, I thought, this guy's got some tricks up his sleeve that I don't even know. I don't even know what the answer is. So I didn't say nebula and stars and galaxies. But I thought it. So I said to him, well, what is the universe made of? And he says, knowledge. Knowledge. And I thought, well, that's different. That's a different stuff than any of my best um, propositions. I mean, and then and that, by the way, pertains to this topic today of the 100% solution. If we're living in an existence of knowledge, uh, which I now believe we are, we're all students, and we're fellow travelers, and we're dancers, and we're we're party goers. You know, we're joyful explorers in this endless dimension of these principles and what they mean for us. And we could all lighten up, and we could all giggle, and we could all say, I love you. And we could um, smile because uh, it's a, it's a gentle, knowledge is not a forbidding truth. It's a beauty, and an invitation to be children of God and be pleased by the adventure, and which is such a surprise to me, because for me, um, I had precluded that it was a different universe. It was a universe of my beliefs, and that's what was true for me. And Sid exploded that, and exploded it, and exploded it, and not like not to be mean or anything, but he was a person of truth. And And those people don't come along every day that I found. I've never found anyone who knew it any better than Sydney Banks. And and maybe you have. And if you have, terrific. But I think those people, the enlightened ones that have been throughout our human history, have all said the same thing. And have been people of God, you know, witnessing truth. So to the town hall.
Joe has something to share. Joe?
Thanks, Brett. Hi, Keith.
Oh.
Sorry, I've got a sore throat, so my voice is a bit weird. When you were talking about knowledge, my favorite passage in the Bible is like Corinthians, and it came to mind because I've got it on my computer, and it says, if I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing.
Mm.
And it says, a later bit, it says, for we know in part and we prophesy in part, but when completeness comes, what is in part disappears.
Mm.
And the final bit is, I think, quite famous, with the greatest of these three remain: faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. And what I heard from that was almost that in the hierarchy of life, like love is the big one that trumps it all, or whatever, and then knowledge is not as powerful or something, and maybe it's referring to our individual knowledge rather than universal knowledge. But I was just wondering if Sid ever said anything about love versus knowledge, or if there's a difference. Or I know he said like love and understanding as almost like the two kind of coexist, and maybe he gave them equal weighting. I don't know, but I was just interested to know about that from that passage as well, just thinking about that passage in the Bible. Yeah, thank you.
Oh yeah, beautiful. Yeah, like these mystery for me, and but Sid spoke so profoundly and eloquently and beautifully and extensively about love. Uh, um, and again, as all, this is just my way of, again, kind of explaining that keyhole, if you will. But he said in one of the pieces of his writing that I found this year, and he said it in the middle of this these questions that I'm hoping to include in my book, because I found every time I read it, I find something more, like you do, may very well do, or other people may very well do in reading their own, um, high books or religious books or um, this is just from my experience, but many years ago, Sid mentioned get the red letter edition of your Bible and just read the words that have been passed down through the ages of that Jesus said. And I didn't even know at that time that there was such a thing as a red letter edition, but I found one, and Sid brought back so much to me of the beauty and the value of these enlightened people, and in this, and I started to think of those people as enlightened people, not as the, not in some kind of human way. Jesus was right, and or whatever. I, I, he forced me to go beyond labels, and he would talk about really high people, enlightened people, and he says, I'm just going to say this. He says in this book that we're hoping to include in our book, he says, I speak from where Jesus spoke. Now, whether you like that or not, you find that offensive or not, or whatever, but if you think about, this is the way I think about it, like this bank of truth that enlightened people find. He's not saying he's Jesus. He's not saying, he just said it so distinctly, and he said it in a way that I've never really heard anyone else say it. I speak from where Jesus spoke. And but and again, he would say, Sid, I'm referring to here, he would say, I'm not um, I'm not talking religion. So which was helpful for me to hear a message of truth uh, that was not religious, if you will, or not political, or it was, the truth would be like this wealth, a treasure of truth, and available to us all in either bits and pieces or chunks, or even full-blown truth. And if you find someone that you think speaks that so beautifully and so profoundly and so meaningfully to you, then you've really found something. And if you and that truth will not be there won't be any opposite to it. It's not it's not an intellectual truth or it's a truth beyond conditioning. So it's not a cultural truth or a religious truth or an opposite. There's really no opposite to to a truth of that caliber. And that's why they've been preserved and shared um and means something to you, Joe. uh, uh, you're finding something that is something you can be comforted by and uh, keep learning from, keep finding wealth from for your whole life. And that sort of thing exists is remarkable, and that it pierces through your conditioning and your beliefs and concepts and ideas, and it touches your heart so deeply that you are blessed by, I mean, just think of that. Think of that. I mean, that's just a remarkable um, effect of mental health. And that's why they read passages to people, let's say, that are dying or that are need comfort beyond their own body or beyond their own diseases and such. That's why we share truth with one another, because it's good stuff. It's the greatest stuff. And uh and hopefully, um for the likes of me and Brett and my fellow Three Principles folks and all of us that we're no, we're touched by that, and it speaks to us. It speaks to our soul, and I'm grateful for those enlightened ones or um, messages, because they're healing, and the feeling of healing that you find in those words that's what you're looking for. And if you ever lose it, which I do, uh, you can find it again. It's an eternal truth. And it is an eternal truth beyond anyone's conditioning. I I remember just again one little experience I had once when I wounded my hand really badly. I cut my hand really deeply, and it cut the tendon to control my finger. So my finger just went limp. And I went to the hospital, and it was immediately they said, well, we'll just have to fix this right now in the ER. And so as they were doing surgery on my hand and literally sewing my tendon back together, there was a nurse that came into the room, and she never said anything. But I knew she was there because she would come up and she was behind me, so I couldn't see her face or anything, but she would put her hand on my head and just comfort me. And it meant so much to me, you know, the touch and her love, her caring. And she was an ER nurse because she didn't stay there all the time. She had to leave and go tend to things, probably other patients. But then she would come back. And it was like every time she came back, that healing presence that she gave me in her duties as a professional. I've never forgotten that. And if I can do that for another person, it's a gift, you know, it's a demonstration of truth. And I'm so happy that we have that in us to be vessels for the truth to be shown, you know. I think that's in effect, in a way, what I found, you know, through meeting Sid was you know, an example of 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 my best thinking and my best consciousness and my best mind. And I think if we all can be, well, that's just what worked for me. And I hope everybody finds what works for them. It'll be the same thing. I have no doubt about that. Well, maybe this is a good place to stop for today. It's been quite a town hall. I never expected it to be this way, but when you're sharing what's coming to mind, you just you're it's a privilege. So it's a privilege to be here with you all, and thank you all for coming, and God bless.